So I know I already posted today, big announcement, but obviously I knew this was coming on January 1st, and I knew that we would get our letter from the producer of Final Fantasy XIV. Not a letter produced live, but a letter produced not live. His New Year's greetings. For those of you not familiar with the game and haven't followed it for more years than you're totally sure of at an initial glance. New Year's Greetings is basically where Yoshi P writes out a letter to us that looks back at the last year, usually has a lot of thank you to it, but also looks forward at what is planned, and he drops a little bit of a tidbit. Historically, this would be after the first Fan Fest, and we have two other Fan Fests, and so there's kind of a pacing there where this is in the middle of the hype for the next expansion, but obviously this time that will all take place on the February 5th showcase event. We really don't have much else outside of that, and we have questions about 16, and we have questions about we just have questions, and we really don't have answers. And so this letter is something to cling to in that way. Brian and I actually talked about the importance of this letter and what it means and what we can expect looking forward at the year, and a little bit of our reaction is laid into what I'm sure is us just rambling on over on Work to Game. So if you want to go get more of my impressions here, I'll keep those relatively to a minimum at the end of this one, and that is where those are. We already filmed it. So this is for people that don't like reading. I'm going to read this to you now. Hello, this is producer and director Naoki Yoshida, wishing all of you, Warriors of Light, a happy new year. 2020 was a year that won't be forgotten soon, and I mean that not only for our development and operations teams, but also for our players, indeed the entire world. Even now, the threat of COVID-19 continues to present us with unprecedented daily challenges, the likes of which we only knew about through history books. In the midst of adversity, we're determined to provide you with a source of entertainment while remaining mindful that our team members too have their own families and are facing the same hardships as everyone else. Setting up stable working environments and figuring out how to get on with things was, I think, a common experience for a great many people. And through it all, we've received messages of support from a truly staggering number of players. When things get rough, it's your voices which spur us on and keep us moving forward. We thank you for all your thoughtful words of encouragement. Adapting to the obstacles of COVID-19 is an ongoing struggle, but we remain committed to developing and running Final Fantasy XIV to the best of our ability. So where do we stand? The saga of Shadowbringers concluded in patch 5.3 and hinted at the next story to come. But of course we had patch 5.4. Then we flipped the page to the final chapter in the tale of this star. Keep a close eye on the team's progress this year as events build once more to a thrilling and unexpected ending to the story, not to Final Fantasy XIV itself. I'd barely finished typing this when an unannounced visitor, a minstrel, as he introduced himself, on a journey from faraway lands. He placed a note into my hands and it had this poem written on it. Our progeny may never know wherefore we look unto the sky, nor why we dig for truths below. We bear their scorn or watch them die. From the Journal of a Resolute Man. Who is this resolute man? And what's this about his progeny scorning him? I turned to put these questions to the traveler, but he was gone, vanished as if swallowed into a rift between worlds. We could ponder the meaning of this verse and make a few guesses. The upcoming Final Fantasy XIV announcement showcase, planned for February, might help us make more sense out of it. As the day draws near and we make our preparations, I'm excited as anyone to see what this event has in store. Meanwhile, we're entering our 11th year of operation since the original release of Final Fantasy XIV. The development of running an MMORPG is incredibly difficult undertaking, and the larger in scale they are, the fewer of them survive beyond the 10-year mark. It's thanks to you, our Warriors of Light, and your inexhaustible enthusiasm that we've reached this amazing milestone. Please continue to lend us your support, and we'll do our utmost to reward the passion for the game with captivating stories and high adventure. Lastly, I'd like to address a slightly different topic. As the battle against COVID-19 rages on, one of the toughest jobs falls on our healthcare workers, who risk themselves on the front line to care for the infected and shield the rest of us from harm. Amongst the words of encouragement we received, there were many messages from these self-same workers that were both heartfelt and heartbreaking. No matter how tough things get, I can always see my friends in Final Fantasy XIV. It gives me the strength to face the next day. Please keep it up. We need this. If anyone should be grateful for something, it's us. Thank you for everything you do. You work under enormous stress, but despite all of the sacrifices you make, Some people still treat you with disrespect, and it's unforgivable. Something you must wonder why you work so hard, and when you encounter those to clearly don't appreciate it, but I've already read this more than once. You can't carry on. You can't carry the world on your shoulders. Our earnest comments may not affect you as keenly as one pointed and thoughtless remark, but know that you always have our gratitude and support. Allow me to offer you that at the very least. We will keep doing all we can, and I hope our efforts give you reason to smile in these difficult times. I have no idea why that made my eyes water. I was fine. I read this fine this morning, and I reacted to it fine with Brian. We didn't even really touch on this part. So yeah, Brian and I talked about like what this means for 5.4, what this means for 5.5, and going into 6.0, what we can expect within announcements. On stream today, we had an incredible turnout. You guys were so supportive. Started off the year with support for Brian and I that I could not have expected. Twitch was being awful, so when the first hour, it said I had nobody watching, and it looked like my stream was live, and I wasn't getting chat, and so I was like, well, I don't know. And then I could see people kind of popping in and out, and then it wasn't letting them chat, and so I was like, well, maybe people are just off for the day and they're off doing other stuff. And then Twitch started working, and it was just a wave of you, and the support that you guys give over on YouTube, on Brian and I's personal channels, and on our shared channel Work to Game, the support you give on stream, it Yoshi P said it spurs them on. It's what spurs us on. So huge thank you to you guys for today. And Brian and I already reacted to the first 2/3 of this, the part before he said, and lastly, I'd like to address a slightly different topic. We've talked about all of that over on Work to Game. So this isn't really the place, and I'm already at 7 minutes. So, but I will say on the slightly different topic, and this is where I would want to end as well. This has been a rough year for a lot of people. And unlike a natural disaster where there's tragedy and people who are not affected by that tragedy can reach out and lend a hand, even when somebody's hurting in some objective measure less, they're still hurting. And so there just isn't that ability to empathize and to be there for people, even if you want to be. And so, as we see people who are forced into positions where that's the only option, especially healthcare workers in a healthcare crisis. This is just this is something that defines a generation. This is something that defines policy, action, attitude, who we are as countries, who we are as people, who we are as a global community. This is something that really shows true colors. This is something that shows where a society's value lies, and how well we respond to adversity. And it's something that I think is it's easiest to just avoid or focus on something light like a video game, and then you're reminded that it's still there. I actively didn't like the way the Starlight Festival ended because 14 is Eorzea wasn't affected by COVID, and it was nice to have some place that wasn't. And so I was a little bit mad and a little bit hurt, and that's a personal thing. That's because I had put expectations on a game that it was something that didn't need to be affected by this, and the devs felt differently, and that's a personal feeling, and that's just my response to how I'm feeling with this year. So I do want to thank those who too much has been asked of, because there isn't the ability to reach out and help carry that load. Even at a simple level, I can't be a doctor. We can't do it. We can't be nurses. We can't work in the healthcare community. We can't help run insurance companies and workman's comp companies, people who you only call when you're already having a bad day. It's like somebody that works with lost luggage. Everybody on the phone with you is already having a bad day. So there's nobody there for you when you're having a bad day. If you're in an emergency room, life's already rough. So they're not getting to experience even the best of what last year had to offer. They're catching the absolute bottom of the barrel. And without them, it gets worse. So I do want to say it's hard to express or even feel the appropriate amount of gratitude for the people that have made things better when better doesn't feel good. and after healthcare workers, that extends to everybody else that made some sense of normalcy possible. The developers of the games we love being a huge part of that. It's easy to criticize when games don't release on time, or when they do, they're not perfect. And it can be very frustrating. But like in this year, I don't want to write them a blank check, but like, especially to the ones who delivered, especially to Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft that put out an incredible and a reliable product. We owe a huge thanks. To people who delivered and delivered on time and exceeded expectations, or even just met what would have been historical expectations, we owe a huge debt of gratitude. So thanks first and foremost to healthcare workers. Thanks first and foremost to all of that. This letter almost made me cry on a video, which I don't do. There's no need for that. But thank you. Thank you to Yoshi P as well, and thank you to the entire development team and localization teams and production teams and everything around Final Fantasy XIV, where this letter came from. I think we have an incredible year in front of us. Brian and I will do what we feel we can within our limited scope of capabilities to support the community and offer our thoughts where they're wanted, and possibly in your YouTube feed where they're not wanted. Sorry. We'll be putting out a lot this year. We have a lot of big plans for this year, and hopefully we get to have all of them meet it. So to end on it, to end on something unrelated to all of this reading, thank you. Thank you guys for last year. There's probably very few people in the world that don't deserve some thank you, but to healthcare workers, I don't know that there's any way to go back and tell you thank you enough.